collaboration between DSG and Duke?
Yeah, so a big part of my platform is initiating a student philanthropy fundraiser on this campus, and this is something I actually was already planning to ask for your help in if I'm elected, or even if I'm not elected. I think it's something that needs improvement before this question came up, because I think we need to spur student philanthropy on this campus because, one, I think it's lacking, two, it pays a lot of dividends in the long run, three, it's a way that DPS could get directly involved, and four, it runs concurrent with the capital campaign. So the capital campaign, which is something I worked on as having spent 2 years on the Board of Trustees Institutional Advancement Committee, seeks to raise $3 billion for Duke in a variety of aspects, and for our entrepreneurial climate, for our arts climate, etc. And that money is being paid by individuals who have millions of dollars to donate to campus. I think, though, a big part of service, and something very embedded in service, is the idea of giving back. And we often think sometimes, not DPS particularly, but I think any college student thinks of ways of giving back to marginalized communities. And sort of in doing that, we sort of otherize people, not all the time, but I think that we come from a place where we have a skill set that we'd like to give back. I think student philanthropy back to Duke is different, and it's nuanced because you're giving back to an institution that has given you so much. And I think that's something I'd like DPS's collaboration on and sort of spurring on campus, because if we get people donating $5 when they're on campus as students, then we can get them donating $5 million now. In fact, trends show that if you get people donating earlier on back to their institution, they'll continue to be donors later on in life. And we may not all be making millions, but if we are, it would be great that for the students who are 50 years from now, that they're able to enjoy really facilities that are top and state-of-the-art. So there's a couple of ways I was thinking of sort of spurring this student philanthropy. And I was looking at examples of other campuses that have student philanthropy drives that run concurrent with their capital campaigns. One example would be putting piggy banks within sort of each organization and then having people drop their change in the piggy banks, and then one day taking all the banks to a quad and like smashing them together and in a very dramatic fashion and seeing if there was how much change we collected. I need DPS's help not only in advertising.
I was shaking my head so you wouldn't ask a question, not at what you're saying.
Okay, yeah, no problem. We need to raise, I need DPS's help to decide not only where this money is going, so would it go to a capital expenditure at Duke, would it go to a nonprofit we want to donate to, how best to spend this money, and also how to ignite student philanthropy sort of in the projects we're doing. So yeah, that's definitely a way I think we could collaborate.
Okay, cool. And then the second one is, what do you see as the role of DPS on campus?
Yeah, so service has always been a big part of my life since freshman year, having participated in Project Change, in Ghana, having worked on refugee issues for the past couple of years, having gone to Clinton Global Initiative with Christine, among other people, and I've realized that the resources, the way I've been able to do service on campus has been because Duke has provided me a lot of resources to do that. So I wouldn't have been able to go to Jordan if Duke hadn't played for my plane ticket, and for had not provided that program as well. And I think that's something DPS does not only effectively, but it sort of instills as well. It acts as a bucket organization because it's an efficient way to consolidate and make service efficient on this campus. If individuals just willy-nilly decide to do any sort of service project when they were in disparate sort of communities, and this is in fact how a service community was at Duke many years before DPS started, it's inefficient because all these different groups are requesting money, and that creates a hassle not only for SOFC, but it creates a hassle for students getting involved in knowing what they want to do. And because a student is probably not just interested in, let's say a student wants to work on disadvantaged youth in Durham who end up in gangs, per se. I know you're writing a thesis on that, Ellen, actually. Let's say that's something they want to work in. Well, they're probably also interested in issues of poverty. They're probably also interested in education empowerment. And we have service organizations on this campus that deal with that too. What DPS does effectively is it brings those all together and helps people who are generally interested in service anyway sort of mitigate the differences between these organizations and decide where they would best be served. It also gives them the resources to make them successful too.
Awesome. Third, we'll name 3 DPS actions, 2 or 3 that you thought were significant and what made them meaningful.
Yeah, so the first one I actually know about my sister who's a freshman, and
yeah.
I think there was really good leadership development through the DPS First Connect program, and I think that a really important part of instilling service on campus is leadership development, because when I came to Duke, I wanted to get involved in everything, and I cast it's been a long day, but I am mixing up all my words. I cast a really wide net, and I did that because I didn't know what I wanted to get involved with, and I'm an oldest child, so I've never had someone there who's gone through it first. And throughout my life, I've always sought out mentors. And so my freshman year, my mentors, among them Pete Short, Kaveh Dinesh, were incredibly helpful in sort of helping me define where I wanted to go, and that's why I turned to DSG. I think there are a lot of freshmen on this campus, my sister included, who have found mentors in the organizations they've been involved in, like DPS. And I think that's really good because if you mentor people early on and say service should be an important part of your life, this is how it's been an important part of my life for me, for example. So Andrew, you could say, you know, last year I worked as class president for the class of 2014, and I got this out of that. And I think that I realized that public service has always been an important part of my life, and I think you, person X, would like that too. That means a lot to someone who already looks up to you, and so I think that's one really good thing that DPS did. Second of all, and this might seem like a trivial thing, but I think it's really important, is I think sort of changing how emails were sent out. I'm on your listserv. I think changing out emails were sent out this year was really effective. And I think there are ways to improve, but I think even changing sort of color coding, because previously it was a black and white list of endless sort of activities after activities. And I thought that I just would never read that entire email. So I think in color coding it, it made it more exciting, and it also made it easier to see the difference. And that's a really trivial thing, but sometimes those trivial things really make a strong difference as well. The final thing I really appreciated this year was DPS approaching us about how to sort of delineate service costs through SOFC. And I thought that was not just very proactive of DPS, but I also thought it was a solution that needed to be addressed because SOFC was pretty arbitrary in their funding. And having been on SOFC last year, I can tell you that they're often very arbitrary. And I think sometimes decisions are purposeful and good decisions are made, but often decisions are just made on the margin and thought, well, I think this is a service event and I don't think this is. I think this is a giveaway and I don't think this is. And I think it was important to delineate, hey, if we're giving books away to a sort of a children's school or through America Reads, America Counts, for example, then that might not be a giveaway in the sense we would normally think of it. That might be a sort of capital expenditure that really helps instill service and make it a better project too.
Awesome. And then the final one, how can DSG better support DPS and the larger service community? So 65 groups and just people who serve.
Yeah, so wrapping up at the end of that last question, I think we need to better delineate how DPS is funded in several ways. First, in sort of capital expenditures for service. So if you're buying utensils to do a cooking class with refugees, for example, or if you're buying, in Ghana, for example, we had to buy reading materials to help teach refugees or individuals who wanted to learn English. We need to sort of delineate who should fund those. Should it be SOFC, or should we create a separate sort of service bucket for that as well? And I think that's a way that DSG can support. I am very much, I think Duke College Republicans said it really well in their endorsement of me the other day. I'm someone who doesn't, and it's not because I'm inherently a Republican, but I think that government shouldn't actually be doing a lot, not just generally in life, but also on campus too. I think DSG often thinks like we're the solution to all problems. And if we pass a resolution on something, or if something happens, we need to respond to it. And we need to be very public about it. And we need to get the recognition that we solved the problem too. But if you look at some of the most successful sort of initiatives on campus, they started with individuals. And let's take, for example, the Kasich incident. That was started by 3 people who were pissed off about something and decided to protest about it. And they were successful in the sense that they got a lot of awareness about it. And I doubt that Kasich will host a party like that ever again. And in that sense, they were successful. One could debate whether discourse was helped by that or not, but that's for another hour-long conversation. But that was successful not because DSG got involved and said, oh my gosh, we're going to try to handle everything. It was individuals. And so I think DSG, and I'd like to emphasize this very strongly, should be there in terms of providing resources and providing institutional support and being a voice when you need it. But they should never sort of take away the voice from students and say, and there's a distinction there. There's a distinction between saying we are the voice of students and saying we're the voice of students when you need it, or we'll be the facilitator for your voice. So we don't need to march into Larry Monetta's office for you if you wanted to expand service funding. You could do that yourself, but if you need our help, we're more than happy to help you. And I think that should be the role of government, not only in society, but I think on campus too.
Great. That was right about